Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our series of Shirim on the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom commentary to Rashbi's Idra Rabbah. And having completed the second parak of Adir BaMarom, we're preparing ourselves now to enter in to a new shlav of the Hiskalus of what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was bringing down, as well as what the Ramchal is revealing through Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Just as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was revealing based on the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, so to all of the tzaddikim who come about afterwards are revealing based on the words that were stated previously by the previous generations of tzaddikim. To the degree that the hishtalshelus of the Torah from the mouth of the tzaddikim ha'amitim is a perpetual growth that bases itself completely and entirely upon all that preceded it, and only from that place it grows outwards to reveal something new. And then every subsequent level of novelty or chiddush is also going to have to take in this very delicate balance of the perpetual archival and movement back into all that has been said already, and only from that place revealing the more that is contained within those letters themselves to reveal the outgrowth of novelty and chiddush, and then that gives us the ability to go even further down into the material to reveal more chiddush. And now Ramchal is going to take us to the next shlav of what is taking place in the Idra Rabbah and what is accessible to each and every person by reading the words of the Ramchal, by reading the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and opening ourselves up to this process. So to read the words of the Zohar HaKadosh itself, this in the Rav Shariki edition of Adir BaMarom, so Perek Gimel is described as Hachanos L'Gilui Hasodos L'Seder HaIdra. We're not quite at the teachings of the Idra Rabbah yet. We're still at the beginning of the Idra Rabbah. All of the preparatory stages describing what the Zohar HaKadosh is, why there was an Eis Lasos Lashem Hifris Orasecha, what the modality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's governance was prior to the rectification that Rashbi wanted to instigate, what the delicate nature of that new process, the Derech of Ahava, the Yichud Hagan, the ability to draw down the light of Gan Eden into this worldliness and take on the shape of Zer Anpin, become the Eitz HaChaim, which means to descend down into particularization for the sake of revealing a more difficult but far more potent light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the innermost interiority of Chachma, which is ultimately the secret of Atik, which is what the Idra Rabbah is coming to teach us. The Idra Rabbah is ultimately coming to reveal how Atika and Zer Anpin are fundamentally unified within one another, and why it's specifically by way of the Eitz Chaim of taking on the shape of a human being in accordance with the gradations and the shifts and the katnas and the gadlus and the ibor and the yanika and the moichen and the ibor and the yanika and the moichen and all of the perpetual emptiness and fullness, all of those stages of development and dependency that are present in the status of Zer Anpin, in spite of the fact that it appears to be a deviation away from the original light of unity, which is Ima being mashpia down to Malchus immediately in the situation of in case of emergency break glass. What the Ramchal and what Rashbi are bringing us into is the confidence and the love and the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that enables us to take the steps into concealment itself for the sake of revealing even more. So we're going to look at the words of the Zohar HaKadosh themselves, and then over the next few weeks, Be'ezras Hashem, we'll move forward into this shlav of the Idra Rabbah, and then we're going to get closer and closer to the teachings themselves. But make no mistake about it, the framing is on a certain level, more essential form of teaching than the teachings that take shape within the framing itself, the hakdama and the siyum, the narrative frames that hold the content that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was being mitgaleh, in spite of the fact that they appear to be less significant in terms of the details of the system and more symbolic and poetic and evocative in their nature, nevertheless, it's these hakdamos that Ramchal is bringing us into, the words of Rashbi, which are pregnant with significance for each and every one of us, wherever we find ourselves, whatever the state of our spiritual functionality is, we can find ourselves in these teachings as well. So the words of the Zohar HaKadosh, the words of the Idra Rabbah are as follows. And everything that we do, everything that we say should be to draw down the schus of the tzaddikim ha'amitim, to be ma'or the schus of the tzaddikim ha'amitim and the tzaddikim in our generation, and Nishmas Yisrael, which undergoes the process of the Derech of Ahava and the Yisurin and the Birurim, and for so long have been in the Emtza, which is seemingly disconnected from the beginning and the end, but nevertheless, we're getting closer and closer to coming to that point of Samchenu Ki Mois Anisanu, that we will ultimately come to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light of unity most explicit in the territories where we felt that he was most absent. Samchenu Ki Mois Anisanu, within the days of our servitude, within the days of the concealment, within the days of that descent away from light, it's specifically there that we're going to come back retroactively and say, wow, Hashem, it's specifically there that you were most potently revealed in the secret of the yichud of the Reisha and the Seifa, which takes the middle point and reveals that it is the fundamental place where Hashem could be revealed even more. Lemigzar milin de kashoit. Lemigzar milan de kashoit. Rabbi Shimon says, arm yourselves, enter in here in order to speak words of truth. Lemigzar milan de kashoit. And the commentary we're going to learn today is going to be on the word migzar. Milan de kadishe elyoinin saitzluhu. Rashbi says, now proclaim words that the celestial forces, the angelic academies are going to come to listen to. V'chadan lemishmeilahu. And they're not only going to come to listen, but they're going to take joy in the process of listening. Lemindalahu, to understand it, to know it. Yasev Rabbi Shimon v'bacha. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai sat down and he cried. V'amar, and he said, Vai galina, vai lo galina. Woe to me if I reveal, and woe to me if I do not reveal. Chavraya dahave teman ashtiku. And all of the Chavraya Kadisha that were there with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai were silent in the tears of their Rebbe. Come, Rabbi Abba v'amar lei. Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Shimon's scribe, who understood the secret of concealing for the sake of revealing, he stood up and he said, Inicha kaime demar legala. If it pleasing in the eyes of Mar to reveal it, Emasai Ka'asi Mar, like we said, Mar is Rosh Tevos Moshe and Rashbi. If Mar wants to reveal it, Haksiv Soid Hashem Li'Reyav. David Malka Mashiach writes in Tehillim, the secret of HaKadosh Baruch Hu belongs to those who fear him. V'ha Chavraya Ilin Dechalin Dekud Shabrichu Inan, and all of us here are fearing of God. So there's nothing to be concerned about. V'kvar Ayalu Be'edare B'Debei Mishkana, as we've already determined in the original Idra, in the original gathering of the Idra de Mishkana, which are the secrets of the Mishkan. Minhain iloyu, minhain nafku. Some went up and also some came down. The secret of functionality in the realm of Pnimius is ayil v'nafak, to go up and to come back down, transcendence and immanence, above and below, a baseline floor and an attic where a person can operate in simultaneity in both places, to ascend and descend. That is the prerequisite, to go in peace and to exit in peace as well. Tana, it was taught, itmanu chavraya kaimed Rabbi Shimon, all of the chavraya came in front of Rabbi Shimon, ve'ishtachu, and who was there? Who were the Chavraya Kadisha? It was Rabbi Eliezer Bray, it was Rabbi Abba, it was Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yaakov, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Chizkiya Bar Rav, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yesi. Yadin Yahavel Rabbi Shimon, they gave all of their hands to Rabbi Shimon, all of those 9 Talmidim with Rabbi Shimon, which is the 10th, they all placed their hands together towards Rabbi Shimon, ve'etzbayin zafkul eila, and their fingers were raised upwards, ve'eyalu chalke beina ilone v'yasvei, and they ascended into the field, and they sat amongst the trees, and they began, come Rabbi Shimon v'tzaletz lusei, Rabbi Shimon got up and he davened the davening, Yasiv begavayu v'yamar, and he sat back down and he said, Kol chad yeshav yado betuk shavu yadayu. All of the Chavraya should hold their hands together, and they held their hands together. V'nasiv loin v'pasach v'yamar. And they were prepared, and he opened, and he said, Arur ha'ish asher yasa pesel u'masecha ma'asei yedei charesh v'sham b'seter v'anu kol ha'am v'amru amen. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai opens up with the fundamental teaching of cursed is the individual who comes and makes an idol or a graven image or a form in the form of one's hands to the infinite, meaning when opening up for the Idra Rabbah, which is now going to give us the details and the specificities and the measurements in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself, the fundamental teaching is Arur Ha'isha Asher Yasa Pesul U'Masecha Ma'aseh Yedei Charesh. Cursed is the person who comes to take these things in their literal form. Again, not to deny the literal nature of the language in which they're being conveyed, which is by way of Ruach HaKodesh, but nevertheless, they don't mean what we think they mean. There's no measurement when it comes to the infinite. The secret of the Idra Rabbah is the beginning miracle of the infinite revealing itself by way of finitude. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is announcing, Arur ha'isha sheyasa pesel l'masecha, do not make a pesel l'masecha. Pasach Rabbi Shimon v'yamar, Rabbi Shimon opens up his mouth and he says, Eis lasos la'Hashem. It's a time to act for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amay es lasos laHashem. Why is it? And again, before that, V'sham b'seiser v'anu, and they were all there quietly, and everybody agreed, Amen. All of the Talmidim understood that this was the secret. Pasach Rabbi Shimon v'yamar, Rabbi Shimon opened up and he says, Eis lasos laHashem. It's a time to act for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we saw before, that the Ramchal intimates the fact that it's Eis lasos laHashem, ad emas koi alma achad samcha. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai identified the issue, and there was not enough responsibility being taken for sharing Pnimius HaTorah. And the Ramchal explains that in its Eis lasos laHashem, when a person truly wants to do for Hashem, not for their sake, not for the sake of anybody else, not for the sake of giving for the sake, but only for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Eis lasos laHashem, at that point, the person has the ability to bring out their own Torah, to be the teacher of Pnimius HaTorah. even though they're not worthy of it. What does it mean the Torah is going to be undone? Torah de la'ela, the Torah of Atzilus, the secrets of Torah, the innermost teachings of the Torah is going to be forgotten if we don't do what we need to do. That it's going to be negated and it's going to be forgotten, God forbid, if we do not enter into this place, if we do not keep this. Pasach Rabbi Shimon v'Yomer Yislasos Lashem Mama Yislasos Lashem Mishum Deheferu Sorasecha Ma Yeferu Sorasecha Toila Dile'ela Diu Mevatla Im Lo Yisavid B'Tikunei Da. If we don't do what we need to do, then Pnimius HaTorah is going to lose its revelation. Ula'atik Yoimin Itmar, and to the highest level of revelation, to the highest darga that the person can grasp. Rabbi Shimon reaches up to that place. Ksiv Ashrecha Yisrael Mikamoicha, Ksiv Mikamoicha Be'elim Hashem. In the silence and in the revelation of the strength. He calls to Rabbi Elazar, his son, and he sits him in front of him. Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Abba on that side, me, my son, and Rabbi Abba. This is the general principle. Ad hashta etapnu kaimen. Everybody has been arranged in the way that they've been arranged. Ashtiku, everybody was silent. Shama kala, we heard a voice. Va'archubtin da leda nashkin. And there was a kiss between those voices. My kala, what was the kala? Kala de knufe iloye de miskanfe. It was the sound of the ascendant wings that were fluttering. Chadi Rabbi Shimon v'Yomer. Rabbi Shimon smiles and he says, Hashem shamati shemecha yeresi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I had heard you and I was afraid. Hasam yeyus have lemehave dachil. Zok the Heilige Rabbi Shimon over there, it was appropriate for them to be afraid. Aval anan b'chavivus milsa. But by us, the matter is dependent on love, the path of ahava, the fearlessness of descending down into division for the sake of revealing a deeper unity. That you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your God, that you descend down into the path of ahava. And all of it is from the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for you. I love you, says Hashem. Rabbi Shimon pasach v'yamar. Rabbi Shimon opens up his mouth and he says, one who goes around and speaks out and reveals secrets is considered as someone who is just expressing themselves ad infinitum. But someone who is trustworthy of spirit holds the matter internally. Someone who walks and just expresses everything. If he's referred to as a Rachel, why is he referred to as a Hoylech? Ish Rachel mibayile lememar. It should be referred to as an Ish Rachel. Man Hoylech, where is he walking? Elaman deloy et yashev beruche, someone who doesn't have Yishav Hadas and have the ability of maintaining their breath and maintaining the spirit that moves within them. Velo have mahamna, and they can't be trusted to hold things in. Hahum mile deshama, they can't hold on internally to the word that they heard. Azil begave kechizra de b'maya. They throw it out and it just descends like nothingness into the water. Adir until it's left alone. My timer. Why? Mishum delays ruche de kiyuma, because ultimately there's nothing sustainable there. Avalman de ruche de kiyuma, but someone who has a sustainability of spirit, beiksiv, the pasuk says, v'ne'eman ruach machase davar, that the trustworthy individual is going to speak things out by way of concealment. V'ne'eman ruach, what does it mean to have the trustworthiness of spirit? Kiyuma de rucha, the sustainability of spirit, meaning to say ne'emanas and emuna and emes is something that has continuity to it. Barucha talia milsa. It's all dependent on the spirit. It's all dependent on the breath. Don't allow your mouth to cause your body to sin. Don't allow your mouth to be hoylech rachil magalas soid. And the entirety of existence stands upon one thing, and it stands upon the secret. And when it comes to the matters of this worldliness, we need secrets. And when it comes to the words, the secrets of the ancient days of Atik Yomin that are not even revealed to the transcendent forces above, all the more so. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, I'm not afraid if the heavens hear. I'm not afraid if the ground listens, because we are the foundation of all. This is the secret. The fact that Ne'eman Ruach Machasa Davar, the Leshem is Masbir very explicitly, that Sod remains Sod even when it's conveyed properly. That expression of Sod, sharing Sod, is not the externalization of the secret so that there's no secrecy, but rather it's the revelation that something maintains the veil of secrecy even after all has been said and done, after all has been revealed, because ultimately the deepest secret is something that's going to be ma'ira a person into avodas Hashem, nothing else, nothing more. A person can know the entirety of Kabbalah, all of the osios of Kabbalah, but they don't know anything whatsoever because it doesn't awaken the spirit to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't make a person want to love Hashem more, to connect Hashem more, to live with God consciousness in this moment more. So that's a machasa davar. That's a hoylech rachel machasa soid. Someone who's just expressing the language of sod as if that's the ikar and not the innermost kernel. But in neman ruach machasa davar, they're revealing it by way of concealment, where what remains is still going to be the fundamental understanding that Hakadosh Baruch Hu is the sod. And now we'll go into the beginning of the Ramchal's commentary on Nishlav. We're on Daf Tzadihei in Adir BaMarom. Lemigzer milin dekshait, to teach words of truth. Milin de kadishe elyoinen saitzelu, words that the celestial forces are going to be interested in paying attention to. V'chadan lemishmeilu, and not only that, but they're going to find joy in listening to them. Ulemindeluhu, and they're also going to have to know it. So they're going to have to listen. They're going to enjoy listening, and they're going to have to know what they're listening to. So the Ramchal wants to understand this language of speech being represented by lemigzar, to decree words, almost to cut words away from the mouth and express them in a sharp way where each word is cut off from the tongue to express itself in exactly the way it is expressed. The gezerah hi milfanai. In truth, this is a very big secret. And what you find in the Zohar Chadash and Shir Hashirim numerous times is the language al pumya de Eliyahu iskazer. It was expressed and revealed through the mouth of Eliyahu Hanavi. The itgazer, it was cut from the mouth of Eliyahu Hanavi. The language is referred to as a gezerah. The words carry a certain weight to them, a significance. And now says the Ramchal, I'm going to explain to you the nature of speech, which is referred to as a gezerah, a speech that has an impact. And there's another place in which we find this type of language being applied to speech or language, which is a cutting off from the reservoir of words, from the lexiconical mind within the individual, the dictionary of the mind, the full totality of diction that a person has the capacity to describe. Every word is a chosen word. By definition, is also choosing not to say any other word, meaning to say that language is built out of a severing from all of the other possibilities of speech, and it is a hyper focus on the singular point of speech that now remains cut off from the infinite possibility of all of the other words that could have been said. The other place where we see speech being described as this cutting away, almost this isolating of the word that we're going to say away from the endlessness of all words that could possibly be said. V'chein amru hatach. Hatach is cutting away, is a cutting, it's an act of cutting. Shekol divrei malchus nichtachin al piv, meaning that the words of malchus has the way of cutting with words. The words are cutting. It's a word that severs itself away and becomes a decree of sorts. And in truth, these two figures of speech to define a methodology and a modality of conveying information that bears an import, and it creates a real residual effect in reality to the degree that once that word is said, it has created a cut in existence, and it's no longer the same existence as it was prior to that word being said. They're both one and the same, just like the Paitan says, Hapayat Yasad Gamken, Rav Amnon from Nesana Toikef, V'tachtoich Kitzva V'chol Bria V'tichtov Es Gezar Dinam. So we see that by Nesana Toikef, V'tachtoch and Gezar Dinam are both used to describe this cutting away of something. And the surprise here is that it has everything to do with conveying of secrets. So that's what Ramchal wants to understand. Da. On Rosh Hashanah, which is the awakening of Malchus, which is the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself once again for a new year. So there's a din that's made on the olam, a gezerah that's made on the world. And on that place, on Rosh Hashanah, we know that Rosh Hashanah is the binyan of the Kuma of Malchus, is the secret of learning how to speak. We say, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu cuts off life for each and every individual. It's a cutting away, which is an act of severing, but it's a severing that creates a bond. V'sod hadavar, what's the secret of this? Why is it a chaticha of Chaim? What's the secret? Ki kol ha'ara b'tzeitza mispashetes lakama minei anafim liyamin u'lesmol b'sod aser v'mutter. Once we're dealing with the derech of ahava, which is the Eitz Chaim, which is becoming the Eitz Chaim, which is learning the secret of being avak and having a chesed, gvura, and teferes, and netzach, hod, and yesod, and a malchus, which is the secret of having shloisha kavim, a kav yamin, a kav small, and a kav emsai, which is ultimately going to create a machlokes between those two polarities, and ultimately there's going to be a synthesizing middle, like we described, the two kasharim that have to be mukushar prior to descending down into the derech of Ava, which is keser, das, teferes, and yesod, which is the alignment from the highest point to the lowest point, as well as the expansion horizontally of the plus kasharin of chachma, bina, and das. A person has to gird themselves to enter into the path of Asr, Mutter, Kosher, Asr, Mutter, Kosher, Puzzle, and Tama and Tahor, the six-sidedness of the Eitz Hadas, which is the beginningness and where we flip ourselves from being the Eitz Hadas into the Eitz HaChaim. A person has to prepare themselves to understand that anything that's going to be revealed within this framework of vision, within this framework of the descent into separation, so anytime there's a ha'ara that comes out, anytime HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal something in this world, anytime there's a way of thinking, anytime there's a new hisorus of emunah, what takes place is it doesn't arrive in a single pointed direction, but rather mispashesas lakama anafim. It expresses itself by way of multiplicity. Achas diber aloikim shtaim zu shamati. Hashem spoke once, I heard twice, because reality is always a split thing. Liyamin ulasmol, to the right and to the left, to the secret of asr and mutter. We're already in the territory of concealment for the sake of bechira and to uncover the secret of choy katov lehetiv. V'gam hadin shel kol ha'olam na'asa kain. And this is also how the din of the world is done. Na'asa kach. This is what happens on Rosh Hashanah. Anytime that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bring a judgment, wants to bring a way of dealing with reality, a new illumination of the infinite light that comes down to express itself within reality by way of the Hanhaga. So it's the secret of Elu miyaminim l'schus, ve'elu mismailim l'choiva, that there's always going to be those who go to the right and it's going to be a schus, and those who go to the left and it's going to be the opposite of a schus. It's going to be a decree, not because it's petty or because it's violent, but rather because that's the metzius of living in a world where there's separation. It's going to appear as two. And where does this express itself most fundamentally? It expresses itself in the fact that once we're dealing with the derech of ahava, we encounter two partsufim, zer anpin and nukva. We encounter ourselves and malchus. We encounter Torah and tefillah. We encounter the self and nullification. We encounter expression and we encounter receptivity. These two expressions of Chol and Kodesh, Sheshis Mehachol and Shabbos itself, this is where the split of this worldliness is. This is the derech of Ahava, to go into the separation, to uncover the Ahava that's there. So what is the splitness? Hainu kibihios zer anpin v'nukva, or Zachar and Nekeva, the masculine and the feminine, or the masculine parts of zer anpin and the feminine parts of Malchus, when they stand achor ba'achor, a back-to-back, dependent, immature type of relationship. Azhu shekol echad poine le'avro ve'ena poinim lezeh. That what happens in the immature relationship of this two-sidedness of existence, of Zaranpin and Malchus, of masculine and feminine, of self and other, is that because of the susceptibility in that territory of separation, so there needs to be a protection that is given to the lower elements of these qualities. Zaranpin and Malchus, when we descend down into the Derech of Ahava, where our own egos, where our own sense of self is going to begin to play a significant role in our entrance into Avodas Hashem, where it becomes ensuring that our desire is refined, that it's becoming about lishma, it's about doing things the right way in Bechira. So in that place, a person is always going to be susceptible to a certain element of concealment because I'm dealing in concealment. If it appears to be split, then obviously my mind is going to come to assume that there's a splitness. So there is a protection given in that place, that when Zeranpin and Malchus are emergent, so the relationship between them is back to back. What does it mean back to back? So whenever there's an expression of something in Metzius, it has a two-sided nature to itself that reveals its inherent unity, something referred to as pnimius and chitzonius, the interiority of things and the exteriority of things. The interiority represents or, it represents clarity, it represents unity, it represents all of the good things, and chitzonius represents choshech, it represents the kli, it represents the opposite. Now, that's not bad, it's just the receptacle that enables the light of the pnimius to be revealed. The chitzonius is not at war with the pnimius. It's just two separate sides of the same thing that have to come to terms with being unified together, and that each one gives the other something that the other can't do on its own, thereby revealing a hidden unity that emerges specifically from the possibility of separation. So specifically in the world of Zer Anpin and Malchus, where we come out of Bina, where we're no longer operating in that womb of Bina, and there's an emergence of Zer Anpin and Malchus, so there's a threat of separation. So what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is he creates an an achor ba'achor type of relationship. There's a shared back. The achorayim represents the chitzonius. It represents that place that's susceptible to the awareness of separation. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects that side. The back of Adam and the back of Chava, those places of the susceptibility of falling into the considerations of difference and separation are protected. There's a back-to-back type of relationship, and that is the dependent stage of achor ba'achor. In the dependent stage of achor ba'achor, there is no independency. Each side is codependent on the other. That Zer Anpin is in need of Malchus, and Malchus is in need of Zer Anpin, and Malchus can't draw anything of her own other than what she receives from Zer Anpin, and Zer Anpin can't do anything without Malchus, and there is an inability for there to be a true independent relationship that comes about by way of volitional choice. In the state of Achor Ba'achor, there is a bond that is inseparable to the degree that they are so mutually dependent upon one another that both are protected, but both are unable to experience growth from within where they find themselves. So they're sturdy in their protection, yet they're incapable of growing. And in that place, there's a immature level of dependency. There's an immature level of a visceral bond that cannot exist without the other side of it. And there's a shame there. There's a shame there because ultimately, someone who takes without earning their own, someone who doesn't experience the process of derech ha'ava, of coming to terms with the separation and then working through the separation to then transform the separation into the vessel of light, will never properly be able to look at the light face to face. So there was an ach ba'ach relationship. The backs were mended together, and therefore, as a result of that, the panim of the zachar and the panim of the nekeva, the panim of Zer Anpin and the panim of Malchus were completely separate from one another. They were looking in two separate directions. One was looking to the left, one was looking to the right. And that's the place where the machlokas begins, where it appears to be a separation. The secret of the Nasira that happens on Rosh Hashanah is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places Adam Harishon into a deep, deep unconscious slumber, and he separates Chava, he separates the Nekeva from the Zachar. So now we're separating. There's a chaticha, there's a cut that's made between that bond, between that codependent bond of back-to-back dependency, of mutual dependency. And yes, it's a surgical thing, and yes, it's a difficult process, but nevertheless, it's ultimate for the sake of enabling a deeper level of unity, which is panim bepanim. Yes, they no longer have the dependent stage of immature codependency, but now they have the ability to develop a responsible, volitionally chosen process of coming panim el panim. Now, obviously, the panim el panim is always dictated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but what we get to experience is the process of coming face to face. So that's what the Ramchal is going to be describing here. Ki b'Rosh Hashanah nasa din l'chol ha'olam. On Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu draws down din for the entire world. V'az ne'amar mamish, and what's written over there is ha'chote chayim l'kol chay. So we see this language of cutting. L'migzer milin d'kshoit. Why is there a cutting there? Because beside hadavar, the secret of the matter is ki kol ha'ara b'tseisam is pashatat l'kama mine anafim l'min l'smol besod aser v'muter. When things emerge from the womb of Bina, they're already naturally going to be split to the left and to the right, to that which is permitted and that which is not permitted. V'gam hadin shel kol ha'olam nasakein. And so too with regards to the hanhaga and the din that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places upon the world. Some are going to have things moving to the right, and some are going to have things moving to the left. But it's a split thing. Why? What's this rooted in? Hainu ki bihiyos zun ach ba'ach. When Zer Anpin and Nukva are back to back, azhu shakol echad poina la'avro ve'ena poinem zelazeh. So each one is turned, the face is turned in the opposite direction. Va'az ha'chesed mispashet levado v'hadin levado. And there's no unity between Zer Anpin, which is chesed, and Malchus, which is din, because yes, they're bounded together in the back, but the faces appear to be completely separate from one another. And so too with the malachim, the celestial worlds of Bria that descend down into the territory of Yitzir as well, they also operate in the same modality of splitness. There's going to be those who move to the right for schos and those who move to the right, to the left for chova. Oilim kol hamaasim shel kol ha'olam kulo. This is the way that all of existence takes shape. Hatoivim ma'irim chesed, v'hara'im ma'irim chas v'shalom din. There's a split between chesed and din. There's a split between light and darkness. V'chol echad poine la'avro, and each one turns to their side. V'adayin lo yochol l'tzeis shum davar lepu'ula. And in this level of separation, which is rooted in an immature bond and codependency, so in that place it's impossible for something new to emerge. Ad shetichnas ima Bal Mishpat. What is going to be the Miyashev? What's going to be the Choy Kamachria? It's going to be Ima, it's going to be Bina, from whence both Zer Anpin and Malchus just emerged. In the realm of Bina, all of opposites are unified. Yes, it's a burgeoning possibility of separate expressions of something, but they're all maintained in the singular burst of Bina, which is the Ema Barim Smicha, and the secret of Elu ve'elu Divrei Elokim Chaim. Elokim Chaim is the world of Bina. Only Bina has the ability to say, okay, time to be Menaser, time to create that Nasira, put Zer Anpin to sleep, put the husband to sleep, and teach the Kala, teach the Malchus how to receive from her own place and build up her own resiliency and strength to become a parts of Shalim. That's going to give the ability for there to be an actual Leida Chadasha, not just a codependent bond that can't separate itself from itself, which can't create anything new, but rather an independent relationship, an interdependency that is aware of each strength and each deficiency, and from that place it joins into a relationship to create something new. Ima has the ability to create the mishpat, to create the balance. V'hinin aseret et hazun. She's the one who surgically removes this dependent bond between Malchus and Zer Anpin and enables Malchus to build herself while Zah is building itself. Va'az nikra Gemar Din, and that's going to be the expression. The Gemar Din is when Malchus and Zer Anpin are able to unify together. She'ein oid machlokas ela adarabba. There's no more machlokas. There's no more theoretical opposition between the right and the left, between the Zachar and the Nekeva. That opposition is only from the perspective of ach ba'ach, but from a perspective of panim panim miyad haymachzirasam panim bepanim. There's a return face to face umizdagvim, and from that place, from that sensitive, vulnerable possibility of separation, is born an emergent potency of love, which is the real panim el panim. Ba'az muskam hadim v'yotze b'derech echad, and then both of the tzdadim, the right and the left, make a decision together to allow the din to come out, whichever way it's supposed to be good. And that's what happens when something comes into emergence, where it has a particular valence. Sometimes it's going to be din, sometimes it's going to be chesed, but it's going to have a particular valence. And a person must understand this very clearly. That's what's happening. Bina is mashpia down to za and nuk, and in that place there's an ach ba'ach, which is the codependency of the back-to-back relationship, where panim el panim is not possible, and therefore one panim is that way and one panim is the other way, and it appears to be a deep machlokas between those two until the which is a descent down into the thicker expression of concealment, but it's specifically there that there's a return face to face, which reveals the possibility of shalom and zivug and hiskalis of a davar chadash. Ki b'shas ha-nesira nigmar ha-machlokas. In the moment of the nesira, in spite of the fact that it appears to be a severing of a previous connection, nevertheless, that's the end of the machlokas, because it becomes fundamentally clear that they don't want two separate things. Ki be'yois eimen no seres, when Bina is the one that performs the nesira, he no seres lefi b'chinas ha-ru'uya liyos. Ima, Bina knows what needs to take place. Ema Barim Smecha, that's the place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mashpia lamata. Oh, hadin gover chas v'shalom, there are moments where it has to be din. Oh, hachesed gover, there are times where it's going to be chesed. V'chol ma sheroi levoy ba'olam lefi hamasim, and everything that's meant to come into this world by way of the actions and the decrees that HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires to come into this world, nishar kavua, it's all there in the way that it's meant to be. Ma b'chesed u ma b'din, some are going to reveal themselves by way of chesed, some are going to reveal themselves by way of din. V'soid zeh shem chatach sho'oi lebeis pa'amim ruach. This is the secret of ches, taf, and chaf, which is the sofetevos of Pesach es Yadacha, which is the secret of being goizer, a person's parnasa, of cutting off from the root of all to draw down a chelek, ezuhu ashir hasamech bechelko, the entire process of drawing down parnasa berevach, which is the das of shalom, the unity between Iris and Kalim, comes about by Pesach es yudcha, to open up chachma and to reveal how chachma holds within itself the potential and the potency of bina within itself as well. It's also the gematria of ruach times 2. Ruach times 2, which is 216, times 2 is going to be 428. V'hainu beis ruchos shel zun. There's two ruchos. There's the ruach of the behem and the ruach of the adam. There's the yitzhar tov and the yitzhar hara. Both of them appear to be separate from one another, but in the secret of chatach, it's revealed that it's ruach asi ruach, that one ruach draws down a higher ruach, and it's above and below are unified. Shebecholcham nasis kolahan hagasam. That it's specifically by way of this chatach that we now can understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to fear the Welt in accordance with dinner, in accordance with Chesed. The Ima and Bina noiteles ze bekoiche lachtoich kol hadavarim b'mishpat. And Ima Ima, which is the secret of the Teferis of Ima, which is the Keser of Zer Anpin and Nukva, which is the Shirish of Teferis, which is the Shirish of the Yichud and the Shalim between the two opposites. Bina has the responsibility to do that. Ve'ein acher gzardin machlukas. And after the gzardin, there's no more machlukas. Now it just becomes a shlichus. Besides that, kol divrei malchus nechtoim alpiv. And this is the secret of how Bina is determining what's going to take shape by way of malchus, but it's only by way of making room for Zer Anpin to come into its own shape. Ve'ein echad gzardin, ein acher gzardin machlukas. Besides that, kol divrei malchus nechtoim alpiv. Ve'hine bazeh. This is what begins on Rosh Hashanah. Matchila HaNasira, the separation begins. We know the Aseres Tshuva are the separation slowly but surely of each of the 10 spheres of the Ach Ba'ach of Zer Anpin and Malchus. And then by Yom Kippur, there's going to be a full Nasira. Ad Shmini Atzeres is going to be the Chazara of Panim Bepanim and the Zivug that's going to reveal something new. Mashan and Naser Nishar Kavua. The Nasira takes shape on Rosh Hashanah. And now there's no more Machlokas. V'sod Zesha Amru, V'tachtuch Kitzva L'chol Bria. And this is why in Rosh Hashanah already, even though it's not the Gemar of the Nasira, nevertheless, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu preparing the Gzar Din. And afterwards, that Chatichas Din is now going to emerge downwards by way of the Seder of the Shtalshalis until it comes to a place of Panim Bepanim in the secret of the Zivug. And this is the secret of Tichtoi Ves Gzar Nidam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is writing down the Gzar Din. What is Ksiva? Ksiva Hu B'Sefer. It's the engraving of the Gzar Din from Bina within the train Malchusim of Zer Anpin. One is going to be Osios of Machshava in Leah, one is going to be Osios of Dibor in Rachel, but this Gzar Din is going to reveal itself in multiple ways. And by dint to the fact that the Nasira takes some time to fully express itself from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippurim, which are the 10 Sfiros, and then only afterwards, V'tashlum hazivug at Shmini Atzeres, and all of the Zivugim until Shmini Atzeres, which is the highest light imaginable. It's the light of Mashiach Tzidkenu. L'chein Masiras ha'pitkin hi b'Shmini Atzeres. The deliverance of the pitka, the deliverance of the judgment itself is going to be on Shmini Atzeres. And this is already revealed in another place. We'll stop here. Be'ezras Hashem. There's so much. This chilek, this whole sefer, but this chilek of the sefer is so beautiful, and it works so well if we Be'ezras Hashem keep in mind every parak that we've learned and all of the principles that we've kept in mind, that we're now entering into the derech of Ahava, which is a descent down into the territory of Zer Anpin and the Ibor, the Yenika, and the Moichin, which is a descent away from the original immature unity of Bina, specifically because we trust the love, and there's going to be the possibility of entering into that place of hashpa'a, that we engage with HaKadosh Baruch Hu by way of lishma, not because we think that this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs from us, but ultimately we descend down into the territories of the derech of ahava to engage in the building of ourselves and refinement of ego, to then go down to malchus and create the deepest unity, so then that malchus can go back up into chachma to reveal pnimius chachma, pnimius atik, which is the secret of revealing atik yomin. But atik yomin, the highest light of keser, cannot be revealed other than by way of the descent into the secret of Zer Anpin. And that's what we're discussing now. And that's where we're going to end off. And then what we're going to see is this Gzar Din is also the way that Chidushei Torah takes shape and new thoughts take place, and anything new in any person's life is going to take place. It's going to take place by the severing of the immature bond of codependency, a preparation to enter into that mature state of disillusionment, which makes space for separation, but also reveals the depths of bonds of love that can be trusted even in times where it's not felt. And ultimately the yichud that's going to come about by way of those two previous stages, Be'ezras Hashem.